don't know what this is this time.
Well,
it's a mystery wrapped in an enigma.
Here's how it
wrapped
goes.
in a puzzle.
I put things into the running order, and then people start looking through them and starting to tell me, "Oh, I really like such and such," and it spoils the whole illusion for me. It really, it ruins it. So you get to know now. This week, speaking of Rebels, we're going to be looking at Rebel miniatures.
Ooh. And
Rebel minis do a whole host, mostly in the smaller scale, 10 mil, 15 mil. They do some 28 mil, though. Do. Which is where we're going to start. Because they have some other bits and pieces attached to games as well, but we'll get to those when we get to the small stuff. So 28 mil stuff, they have horror, fantasy, a little bit of Spartans, which you'll probably like, which is always good. But in following on from last week's fantastic, oh my God, they're pigs, you too can have pigskin. A man who fears only one thing, David Cameron. There he is, coming down Main Street with his massive pig's mask on, with a huge cleaver and massive chain and hook, doing the Lord's own work.
Oh dear.
The 28 mil figures are particularly nice. Not sure who sculpted these. Bobby Jackson sculpted quite a few bits and pieces for them.
Right, wow.
Yeah. But his name is marked on most of the stuff he's done. So you'll see those. I mean, the fantasy range is particularly good. I love him. And it might just be because he's got that deep sea diving helmet on him to protect him. Good luck moving around in that sunny Jimbo. But at least he doesn't have to worry about anybody knocking him out with a plant pot to the back of the head. Mm-hmm. It's a brutally big and brutal thing. You can see Asylum Scientists and the Men's in Blacks. Nice. Look at that.
Cool.
Unlimited power. I dread to think, if he's an asylum scientist, what the inmates look like.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
And when it says he's a scientist, does that mean he's just been experimenting on the inmates?
Probably. Yeah.
Good times.
Yeah. He's the NPC you meet at the beginning of the adventure who seems really nice and then turns out to be an absolutely horrible man.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Men in Black, they've left their neuralizers at home and therefore having to make sure there's no witnesses in a more mundane way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know where people got the idea the Men in Black are good from. So it's a headpiece done by Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith. Yeah. The range of muto crazy post-apocalyptic things in the street are all quite good. Especially if you happen to be onto a pig kick at the moment. Not saying I am. Not saying I haven't arranged to have those pigs delivered to me from miniatures from last week. But I have. Of course
not, no.
Yes. But you too could have a whole slew of these. So if you want to do something a bit different for your post-apocalyptic wasteland, or, Necromunda gang. If you want to meet my Delax, here they are. No long trench coats for these baldies, but a love of porcine damage.
They're like spying and pigs.
Yes.
Bill the Angry Clown.
in a budgie smuggler. For once, people are happy that I found an indie that doesn't have big pictures.
I was going to say, probably good that he's far away. Yeah,
that's
true.
Zooms.
The power of the internet.
Yes. So plenty of herd type things to play around with in there. Your pigman leaders and just all the sort of weird and wacky horror.
When we were talking about the post-apocalyptic stuff last time, we were mentioning The Walking Dead and 7TV. I was also reminded of This Is Not a Test.
Yeah.
Like Zona Alpha and stuff like that would be really nice.
Oh, these in Zona Alpha would be particularly disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be 100% on board with that.
But, have your fully kitted out, sort of Dead Zone style troopers going out with all their badass kit, getting run down by pigmen. Would be quite fun.
Yes. The legendary figures is just King Leo and his 300, or in this case, I think 4. And these are quite nice. I think these are some of Bobby's. Yeah, these are Bobby's.
Yeah. So I know Bobby Jackson from a lot of the Reaper stuff. I
Yes.
think. Yeah.
Done
Did a lot
ton
of
of
that.
Reaper.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's 6. Don't worry about it. 3 poses, but 6.
Well, that's enough for 2 ranks.
It's enough for 2 crusades.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. He's sorted.
Launch your crusade against Persia. Obviously, for people who are fans of historical accuracy, once again, we have the leather budgie smugglers.
Mm-hmm.
Yay.
Accurate details.
Accurate, 100% accurate.
Okay.
Science fiction has some really nice commissars. Slash Starship Troopers. It is afraid.
Mm,
Yes.
They really lean into the
military scientist.
Uh-huh.
yes.
Yeah.
It's like we said for
It's
space
afraid.
fascist. It is afraid.
Yeah.
Captured by Clancy Brown. But again, more Mewtwo's. I'm not 100% definitely on a Mewtwo binge at the moment, but I really need more Mewtwo's to come screaming out of the caves for Starschlock.
Ah.
So these are a bit more Dread-esque 2000 AD Mewtwo's.
Yes. They're giving me a little bit of the Heresy miniatures vibe as well, which is
Yeah.
quite cool. So they mix in with a lot of the stuff that's done over there as well. I think
Yeah.
it'd be quite nice.
Stuff Andy's up to.
Ooh.
Quite like them. The
They're
Earth Force
cool.
Militia. Yeah. This guy wielding the twin techs at the end. Like
They've got kind of like a ground crew feel to them. I think it might just be the helmets because they look a bit more like flight caps kind of thing. You could do them as sort of guys watching over your landers and things as your troops go out to go kicking ass.
It's funny you mentioned Heresy because they have a set of sci-fi cops, and the sergeant in the sci-fi cops is doing a very similar pose with a flat cap on him. It's just his uniform's different.
Yeah.
They would paint up very nicely as cadets for the Justice Department of Dread, especially when you look at the big.
They would.
The big
kneecaps
and
stuff on them.
Yeah.
And the helmets have got a very cadet-like shape. So if you want to, put in some chaff to be blown away in front of the halls of justice, then you can do this thing, which is always good. I feel
we're gonna clear this building. You go in first.
You need to learn how this works. Spiderbug does whatever Spiderbug does. And in that case, I want to know what that Spiderbug does.
Those are the episodes from the 90s show where he turned into Man Spider, not Spider-Man.
Yes.
Yeah.
My old nemesis, Parker Peter.
Yeah.
And these guys who are not a million miles away from John Carter of Mars-esque aliens. They're just, missing a couple of arms. They just had an additional set of limbs in the middle of those big long torsos to be good to go. But they've learned their combat fighting using those. I think Mari. They look like hockey sticks, but the Mari have a club that's shaped like that.
Right.
Oh.
So I think that was the inspiration for it, although it might actually just be hockey sticks, John. You might be 100% right. Maybe I'm reading too much into it.
We've seen sword guns before. We could have hockey stick rifles. So,
yeah. Why would you not?
Yeah.
Casey Jones is their God Emperor. There are a couple of, on the subject of space fascists are good. If you read the book or looked at the cartoons, then those are the proper Space Marines from Starship Troopers. Guerrillas, is that what they called them?
Were they called guerrillas?
I think they were called guerrillas. Somebody will tell me if I'm wrong. Don't worry, I won't read them. But they are chunky monkeys. And that's handy because you might be coming up against something that requires a substantial amount of stabbery to be done.
Yeah.
Remember,
the only good bug is a dead bug.
Shoot at the brain stem.
Yeah.
Because if you take off a limb, they're still 65% combat effective.
It's 86.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
86%.
Shoot at the brain stem, put it down for good.
Because was it Rebel that worked with Mongoose to do the miniatures previously, or was it a separate thing for their Starship Troopers game? I can't remember. I mean, it's dead in the water nowadays. But
the Mongoose one were plastic, if memory serves.
Oh, okay, right, yeah.
Anyway, so yes, there are some eclectic mix of bits and bobs in there.
There's plenty of different things
for very hard sci-fi, which is all good and hood. I like the Valorian stuff. That's nice to have some weird aliens out there.
True. Yeah.
We'll very briefly look at the fantasy. because I want to have a look at some of the other bits and pieces. So, Darkhold Adventures, that's where I'm going, isn't it? That cover may look somewhat familiar to people out there.
Rather than the heroic party prizing the gems from the statue.
That's what happens if you don't
wily
pay
goblins. Yeah.
Don't pay your goblin citizenry enough to guard the massive statue, then eventually they're just going to nick it themselves.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Based on and it uses Savage Worlds as a system as well.
Yes, it uses Savage Worlds.
Very good miniature / role playing system that works equally well in both vibes, which is good. So,
yeah. And there's some weird and wacky things. Best kind of kobolds, dog-faced bastards, rather than dragon-faced bastards.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to see any kobolds coming. Smack them upside the head with a stick. And those kobold cavalry theoretically could be used for some of the other things we're going to look at because they're going to be tiny. Because they're only short. But
love him.
There's some gorgeous, gorgeous goblins in here from Roberto. Particularly like that. Still never worked out what that's called. The little wand that a jester has. I know the hat is a motley.
A laughing stick. I don't know.
Could be. Ken Dodd used to have a tickling stick, which is similar but different. And at no point is Operation U Tree looked for him, so okay. We can say that joke. Jousters. Pig calf. Dee.
Could be good alternatives for a certain harefoot jousting game coming out.
Could be
later this year. So
the Black Knight arrives to deal with all the halflings, and it turns out it's a goblin on a pig. I'd be up for that.
Yeah,
be one way of doing it. Time will tell how that one will pan out. I mean, the goblins are absolutely spanking, especially for small scale games. So your Frosty Graves and things like that, Rangers of Shadowy Deeps.
I think one of the nice things about goblins is that you tend to find that sculptors just get to have fun with them because there's always that vibe, that you will have seen if you've looked at Warhammer or 40k or anything, where like goblins are the quirky fun guys that get added in, and they're always doing something a little bit zany, so you get to have a little bit more fun with their posing and all that kind of stuff when it comes to those ranges, which is always nice to see. So.
It is. We'll move away from this after the adventurers. Classic crew, wizard, elf, barbarian.
Cleric, barbarian, yeah.
And a dwarf with a shotgun.
Oh yeah, I thought it was like a big club.
Oh no,
it is.
It's a massive flintlock. Yeah. No, matchlock. It's a massive musket of some description.
You mean a gun with a dwarf?
Yeah. And the thing is, people are paying so much attention to the elf, they probably don't notice him lining up a shop beneath the skirt of that wizard.
Mm-hmm. Why do I now want to create a character that is just a gun? That needs, that has to mind control someone else to move it around.
Oh my god, that would be very good. Yes.
All for that. Yeah. Megatron when he's converted.
Yes.
Gun. You two can lob bombs at people with a fancy pirate.
What is your power? I turn into a tape. Oh.
Turn into a tapeworm? How did you turn into? Oh my god, that's just the worst. So
anyway, Wave was the best.
That is the fantasy, and more or less the 28mm stuff.
Very cool.
Yay.
It's got a little bit of the vibe of the when Otherworld were the thing. Obviously, they did their own little skirmish game, didn't they? Sit down in dungeons. Got the same sort of vibe to it there as well, which is quite nice.
So they have Mighty Armies. Mighty Armies is a massed battle game similar to Fantastic Battles.
Okay.
DBA, DBX, or DBM, L'Art de la Guerre, things like that, where units are individual bases with maybe 3 or 4 figures on them, or 2 figures depending, because 15mm, your base size is 50 by 25, the old GW cavalry base size, but lengthways first. And then multiple units, so multiple bases can be put together to form groups. You can get all of the books as PDFs or as physical versions. And then there's also things like an Ancients version and stuff like that. So when you look at things like this, that is, each one of those is a unit. So unit of Skellies, unit of Skellies, unit of Skellies, unit of Skelly Cav. You're playing on a 2-foot square board.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Your artillery has got a 12-inch range. Most range weaponry is about 5 inches, although it can get up to 8 inches type of thing. So you're playing a full clash in a very small amount of space, which is one of the reasons why.
It's a little bit more abstracted than normal. Yeah.
Then shrunk. Abstracted and shrunk.
Yeah.
Which means you can collect a lot of armies. And the same way with the historic versions, the DBXs and like, you can put together multiple armies and fit them in a biscuit tin and play them on a coffee table and get a game that has the same amount of elements and the same tactical depth that you would get in playing a 28mm game on a 6x4. So it's just much more cost effective. I think Mighty Armies existed before. The name really rings a bell for me. If it did, it's been republished here. There are a lot of army lists that are free to download because the core components of it are things like, light cav, medium cav, heavy cav, elite infantry, blah, blah, blah. They've got a very basic set of stats, and then there are options that you bolt on when you're playing your force. So you go, okay, well, I want to do a dwarf force, so here's a skill that will cost 1 point more per unit to make them a bit more doughty with a bit more fortitude or armor, whatever, So you go basic core list and then start tweaking it. So if you can find a model for it and you want to run it as an army, if you found gnomes, for example, and you want to go, let's get absolutely crazy with the gnomage, then you can do that.
Nice.
So obviously the stuff they have is all represented in the book already. And there are sample army lists that you can download for free for the various things. So you can see things like the worst kind of undead, the dry undead.
The dry undead.
Yeah. Kicking around in there. But they've got a whole host of various bits and bobs. There's the Conquista Dwarves. You'll like
Love
this.
it.
So if you fancy a bit of Renaissance dwarvings kicking around the place.
Well, I mean, there was a lot of gold over there in the New World, and that would
a
draw
whole
the
city of it,
dwarves.
apparently.
Yeah.
A whole city of it.
Yeah.
You two can even have a human priest / monk with you to keep you.
I like to think that
in the
he's
right way.
there under duress because the guy with the crossbow behind him is pointing it at his back. So.
Okay, show us where the gold is.
You're the only one that speaks this weird language.
I really like the idea of Mighty Armies and that kind of smaller scale stuff where you're only essentially having to paint in reality a handful of miniatures. Which should actually mean that actually getting games in and stuff would be a lot easier because you can have all the armies sat and ready to go a lot quicker than you would normally, which is good.
I kind of want to say something and I don't know if I would get flack for it.
Go for it.
But to me, it feels like Kings of War Travel Edition.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
It's the same sort of principle.
Travel.
Warhammer has skewed things massively in that the majority of war games up until Warhammer sort of burst like a flood onto the scene didn't have figure removal. But then so many people have come in via GW and going, well, here's your unit of 20. You've taken 4 casualties, take 4 guys away.
Yep.
And start doing the figure removal thing. And now it seems weird whenever you go, here's your unit. The unit's intact until the unit's no longer on the table. So yeah, Kings of War is a prime example of a 28mm version. And they work. This is probably a little more abstracted because of the scaling. But also in Kings of War, you have a unit, and the unit is whatever you've bought it as. So a regiment or a horde, and it stays that way for the whole game. These units, like I say, each base could be fielded individually, but you can also then go, well, what if we took multiple units and put them together into a large group? They're easier to move for command and control, which you don't deal with in Kings of War, but you do deal with in some of the other historical games we talked about. So when you've got less elements moving individually, you can make the whole group move more cohesively.
Yeah.
So, but it's slightly, I wouldn't say unwieldy, depending on the terrain you're playing on, whatever. Trying to maneuver a large block of stuff is harder, but at least you know where it's all going and it's all going together at the same time and people aren't being left behind. So you've got that sort of interplay coming in. So yeah, they've got the fantasy side of things.
Definitely worth checking that out, I think.
They've also got a lot of individualized things. So werewolves and horror. I'm going to kill all of those to there. So I know Warren's a big fan of trying to play moderns and stuff like that in smaller scale. So if you wanted to have things like a tiny blade, should we call him pocket knife? And
Exacto.
Yeah.
And
It's the only way you're going to see Blade anytime soon.
That's Daryl, isn't it? Daryl and Michonne.
Oh, yeah.
That's Michonne for sure. Yeah.
From The Walking Dead. So they're quite cute. So they've also teamed up with Ambush Alley to do a range of sets using their 15mm stuff for Ambush Alley games.
Very nice.
You can play that in a smaller scale. Like,
yeah.
These poor innocent civilians are going to be killed up desperately.
That Doctor Who at the end.
It does look a lot like Doctor Who, yeah.
It's funny you say that because him and her are available alongside a British telephone box in another set in here. So you're not a million miles away. Are they in the Pulp Adventures? I think they might be.
There they are.
There they are.
Travel to time and space.
Or just call the police.
Or call the police.
That makes sense.
What's your emergency? There are aliens? Oh, okay.
Captain Nemo has just disgorged from the Nautilus onto the embankment, and he appears to be trying to set fire to the Houses of Parliament. I think you've got the wrong number, mate.
In modernity, that wouldn't be such a bad idea these days.
No, well, that's true.
Nobody would miss it.
15mm in the way of your modern military. So you can see there are some little snipers as well, if people require 15mm snipers. And then your more modern men in black and hostages and that sort of thing, all for the 15s. It's very much a home for the tinier people.
It really is.
They even go down to 10mm. But
they're rebelling against the standard of 28mm. There you go. So
you can fit so many more of them in your pocket. But there's some special forces.
You can take them to the pub.
There's your SAS with full gas masks. Yeah, special forces. Yep. Yeah. Storming all over the place. And like I say, they have in the box sets. There we go. So they have Ambush Alley battle boxes. So it gives you
a lot of good things about Ambush Alley.
Yeah, it's not a system I've had a chance to look at, but a lot of people rave about it. I suppose the people who play it quite a bit play it for a reason, that it really does it. So this contains Spec Force, gunmen, hostages, so you can do your full Dark Star scenarios. Everything, all the miniatures
game in a
are in
box,
there.
effectively. At that
point. Which is important when you're playing a narrative style game like that, because so many of them are, prisoner relocation, hostage extraction, blah blah, whatever it happens to be, and then you go, okay, well, I've got my special forces and I've got my mooks, whoever happens to have taken the hostages in the first place, but do I have any hostage miniatures, or do I have the specific bits and pieces? So they do scenario packs along with the miniature packs themselves.
Cool.
for people getting into Ambush Alley, which makes it a nice shop to stop at.
Very
So
nice.
they've got like I say, a whole host of things for the smaller scale, from ancients to moderns and fantasy and sci-fi, all wrapped up from Ambush Alley and the Mighty Armies game systems.
Definitely worth having a look at that in more detail if you want to try something a little bit different in a small scale. Then, yeah,
I think so. And there's some corking figures lurking about in there as well. Right, that's enough of Rebel miniatures. Now let's get back to the news.